For most of my life, I felt like I've suffered from anxiety. And I think suffered is the right word. From when I was younger, and just a sense of anxiousness and dread and panic attacks through my early 20s, um, to even as I got older, just a constant feel of just the tension and the aggravation, the irritation that one feels when they're going through anxiety. Lots of people around me have suffered from anxiety. I wonder sometimes if it's not um, my anxiety rubbing off on, family, unfortunately, or something like that. And I hope that's not the case, but I never want to just outright deny that as a possibility in general. That being said, um, I feel better now, right? Like, not every day's perfect, and not every day do I feel great. There's still multiple times throughout the week and multiple times throughout any given day that I'll find myself just tense. I can just feel it and just like, man, what's going on here? Let me just relax, and I'll tell myself to breathe. So it's something that's gotten better. Not gone away, but it's better. And so I just want to talk about some of the things that have happened to help make this better for me. And part of it is just definitely a mindset and just an understanding of how things are happening in the world, and some things that I do to try to help on a daily basis or whenever I feel the anxiety starting to come back up. I'm going to start with sharing an idea that I heard that was impactful to me. And it's nothing that I came up with. I think originally I heard this through by Alan Watts, and I think he got it from maybe a Tao teaching or an idea of how the earth works, or a way to explain the human experience. And this is that before we were born, we're standing on the edge of a precipice. It's just a dark precipice. You can't see down. And when we're born, we're basically pushed off of this precipice. Us and a whole bunch of everything else around us is pushed off, earth and all the possessions and all those types of things. And as we're falling, we grab onto these things to the earth. And I use earth in a very generic form. It could be status, it could be money, it could be, friends, it could be spouses, it could be drugs, could be alcohol, could be anything. But we grab onto these things because they make us feel secure while we're falling. Never mind the fact that they're also falling. And the whole way to understand and how to be free in life is to stop grabbing onto things and just fall. And when I first heard that, it was a very eye-opening thing. Like, oh, okay. So just trust, right? Um, and there's lots of different iterations of lots of different things that I had to come to terms with, or that I thought through or felt different ways. And from my limited knowledge about different religions, including a much deeper knowledge of Christianity, the idea of trusting God and the idea of just trusting um, the universe for those who feel that, and just falling, submitting, if you will, to the will of God. Uh, a very scary experience, but that idea was just um, kind of eye opening, and it's the idea that you just say yes to life and whatever it holds and whatever it brings, to try to learn to say yes, and not a fake yes and not yes, okay, but like, really, okay, okay, yes, and this, yes. Um, it's easier when the things you're saying yes to are just normal everyday aggravations. It's easier when you're saying yes to a speeding ticket you got for speeding, or maybe a speeding ticket you got and you weren't speeding. Those things are easier to say yes to. It's harder to say yes to the death of a loved one or the pain of a loved one. Those things are a lot more challenging to say yes to. But I'm convinced that the ability to say yes and the ability to accept what is really the key, not to happiness, because I don't know that there is a key to happiness, or even if happiness is the goal. But I do think that acceptance is the key to growth. And not just acceptance in the sense where we say, fine, this is this too, but acceptance where we can sit there and say, okay, God, you know, whether it's shortcomings in yourself and you say, okay, I still love me, you know, I'm still going to treat myself compassionately. I think that's the first step to when you see shortcomings in others, to where you can sit there and say, okay, I still love you. But I really do think this is one of the keys to happiness. Now, there's another side of it too, where you say, okay, well, should you just accept everything? Should you just accept evil in the world? Should you just accept kids being tortured? Should you just accept murder and the horrors that people inflict on each other? And to that, I would say, in the very moment, we may have to accept that this is happening, but we don't have to accept that this has to be our destiny and this has to be what's happening in the next moment. And so, in that regard, whatever God puts inside your soul to speak to, and that's going to be different for everybody. For some folks, what speaks to them and what's in their heart and what they have no choice but to do, it may be, a psychological therapy for abused women. It could be working with addicts. It could be working with people in jail. It could be growing good food that you give to your community. It could be opposing political opponents. It could be seeking political power to make the world a better place in general. Whatever you do, there's a saying, and unfortunately, I can't remember who said it, but it said, do what you do with another human being, but never put them out of your heart. And so if God puts in your heart, or the universe, or whatever terminology you want to say, but if God puts in your heart to go out there and make the world a better place through political means, you have to do that. You'll never be satisfied until you do. You'll never feel like you're achieving what you're supposed to do in this world. Your purpose is not going to be reached until you do that. But as you're doing that, when you look across the aisle, you don't look across with contempt. You look across with love, and you understand that you love them. You accept them. If you had gone through everything that they gone through and thought everything that they thought and had their experiences, you'd do the same things they do, right? And so when you go into relationships with other people, and the baseline, what you're looking for from that other person, or what you're looking for from yourself, is compassion for them, compassion for yourself. When that's your baseline, that's the first step, I believe, to being happier, to making a real difference, and to really making the impact and the change that you want to make in this world. Now, I say all this, and I started with anxiety, because everything that is true about the way that you interact with other people is also true in how you interact with yourself. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Things that I say right now, and I say I believe, and I do believe them right now, and I do believe that they're true. 6 months from now, I may feel foolish for making this video and be like, "Oh, why did I do that? What was I thinking?" But you have to be honest with yourself and truthful with who you are right now. I think Gandhi said something to the effect of, I don't value consistency, I value truth. And I get that. So when anxiety comes up, oftentimes I think that anxiety, the driving force of that anxiety, is us not accepting what is. And sometimes we don't accept what is because we don't think society will accept us in whatever form and condition we are in. And that may be true to some degree. It may be true in a large degree. Sometimes we don't accept us because we're not, we're not living up to our own ideals of ourselves. They were not really created in any type of reality or created based on, what's realistic. It's just based on what we think we should be, who we think we should be. And to that, I would just, again, say, try to step back and say, okay, say yes to this, accept what is. Now, I do know there is a physiological or physical element to anxiety. I do believe that that there are some people whose fight or flight response is overactive. I do think that's partly why I've always was anxious. And so there's physical components to, where exercise and breathing and different things can help reduce it. Finally, one last thing I just want to mention is a practice I've been into over the last month or so. is to try to create space around something, right? And somebody said, I know it sounds kind of crazy, like create space. How do you create space? And it's really just as simple. When something's happening, I'll tell myself, all right, let's create some space. Create some space internally. Just don't say it out loud. It'd be kind of not silly, but okay. But internally, just create space. If somebody's telling me something that I'm afraid I'm not going to like or that I'm going to have a negative reaction to, before I react, hey, let's create some space around this. Just hear it. I don't have to react. Create space. And the more space that you create, the more, there's a connection between time and space, I believe. But the more of that space I can create, the more I can respond instead of react, right? Space and emptiness, on one hand, I think has a cleansing effect on us when we have that chance for space. When we are able to create space between outside things and inside thoughts, I do think that's a chance for, our true selves or God to come in and kind of buffer, the crazy, chaotic mind, and the things that are happening in our reactions. So you have that happening as well. So again, just encourage that for anybody that you can, just create space around this, create space around this. And the other thing that's really important is just know that, you're fine. 100% you're fine. The way you are, the entirety of Earth, everything since the Big Bang on happened for you to be exactly how you are right now at this moment. There's nothing you could do to be any different. Doesn't mean you're not going to grow and change tomorrow. Doesn't mean that 10 seconds from now, things aren't going to change and you're going to be different than how you are today. But where you are right now at this moment, there's only one thing to do. And that's just to say yes.